Thanks for joining us and listening to another God-lived and God-breathed message by Darius Nelms. Our mission is to increase our generation standard back to God's standard of excellence and kingdom living through personal development, relational wisdom, business management, and faith increase. Our aim is that this message inspires and infuses you to reach your next level of living and helps you discover your rightful place in God's kingdom. Now, let's dive into the message.
Friends, thank you so much for joining in with me for the last strategy of my newest and latest book entitled Why Me? 5 Strategies for How Good People Can Overcome Bad Situations. And we're on strategy 5. This is the last and the final strategy as we conclude this book overview. Okay. I'm going to just talk a little bit more in depth about being deeply rooted in destiny as I write about here in the book. And it's very important that you understand and you know your identity because your identity gives you purpose. If you are unaware of your identity, you will do things really that God never called you to do. If you don't know your identity in God and you don't know how God sees you and how he views you, you'll make mistakes that you really didn't need to make, all because of the fragility of your mind regarding who you are as an individual and as a child of God, as a son of God, as a daughter of God. And so you have to know the power of your identity because even when life throws things at you that you were not expecting, when you know your identity, you're able to recover. And I use this example in the book from Judges chapter 6, verses 11 through 22, where God confirms Gideon's identity by calling him mighty warrior. To many, that may not seem like a big deal, but that's a big deal because now God is able to attach an identity to Gideon. And this identity that is attached to Gideon would now shape and affect Gideon's next moves. See, without this identity attachment, had God not called Gideon mighty warrior and had this dialogue and exchange not going on between Gideon and God, Gideon would not know all that he was capable of. He would not know how he would fulfill what God was even asking him to do. So your identity will always be attached to what you do next. Oh, don't you miss what I just said? Your identity will always be attached to what you do next. When you know your identity and you know who you are, you know what you are, you know whose you are, that will keep you from making certain decisions because you understand that your identity is attached to what you do next. Because prior to God letting Gideon know who he was, Gideon was doing really what he could do best at the time. But once God confirmed Gideon's identity, all things changed for Gideon. I also talk about the do or die mindset in the book, okay? The do or die mindset. And this do or die mindset allows you to understand missions, right? Being on a mission. This is very militaristic, but when you are on a mission, missions are do or die. You either do it and you come back home or you die in the process. And so when you understand this do or die mindset, that do or die mindset gives you great perseverance in the face of adversity to do everything you can to come back home, right? To do everything possible to come back home. And so this great perseverance is the thing that you need to be able to recover in the face of bad situations and setbacks. So in order for us to be deeply rooted in purpose, we need to adopt a do or die mindset, which is to help us advance with purpose and to help us advance with great perseverance. And knowing who you are allows you to understand that I'm going to complete and finish what God has set out for me to complete or finish. This is a do or die mission. There are 2 very dangerous questions that as humans that we typically will have a hard time asking. And those questions are what other people think about you and who am I? So I guess the greater question would be, who am I and what do others say about me? Those are the two questions, okay? The two most dangerous questions to ask, and the reason why they're dangerous to ask, I'm sorry, guys, I'm getting my thought process going here. The reason why those two things are dangerous to ask is because you may be afraid of the answer, right? You may be afraid of the answer. You may not know the answer. So that makes it dangerous as well. You may not know the answer. So if you don't know the answer, then guess what? In our Western philosophy, we may be inclined to make up an answer. You're missing what I'm saying. If you don't know who you are, that's dangerous because you may make up something, right? You may make up who you are because you are uncertain about who you are. But it's dangerous to not know who you are because then you may graduate to the point to say, well, what do others say about me? And if you ask what others say about me and you don't know who you are, then you're going to let what they say shape who you are. Two dangerous questions. Yet, Jesus asked the two most dangerous questions. He asked the disciples, who do people say the Son of Man is? Who do people say the Son of Man is? They gave him an answer. Oh, they say you're this person, you're Elijah, you're a prophet, you're this, you're that. Then Jesus said, but what about you? See, you've been with me, as he's telling his disciples. You've been with me. You walked with me. You've seen me do things. You've been in my midst for some time. But who do you say that I am? And then they began to, shoot off other things. And then it was Peter who began stating who he was by way of the Spirit. But the danger, of asking such a question about, who do people say that I am, being concerned about what people think and, maybe not even knowing who you are from within, it can cause you to doubt yourself if you receive the wrong information. Because again, human nature is governed by perception and appearances. And so we work hard to show who we are. And the minute that someone misjudges us or mislabels us, it could cause us to question ourselves up to that point. And so we want to be certain of who we are. This is being deeply rooted in destiny. And so being deeply rooted in your identity is being connected to who you are. And Jesus understood this, even with asking the two dangerous questions. He knew who he was deeply connected to. He knew what he was sent on earth to accomplish. And no situation of the path will stand in the way of his final destiny. Even the disciple Peter, as he was telling Peter that he was going to die, Peter stood in the way and said, oh, no, Lord, not on my watch. You're not going to die. No, you're not. No, you're not. I'm not going to let nothing happen to you. Jesus said, get behind me, Satan, because you're concerned about human affairs. See, Jesus would not let anything stand in the way of him fulfilling his destiny. As a matter of fact, Jesus found the fastest track to death. Once all things were in motion and once the time was set, Jesus found the fastest pathway to death. Jesus found the fastest pathway to death to fulfill his destiny. Jesus would let nothing stand in the way of his death. Jesus did everything possible to fast track his death because his death was his destiny. Being affirmed and confirmed. Jesus was affirmed by elders and, various prophets and prophetess after his birth. So in Luke chapter 2, verses 25 through 35, Simeon, who was an elder, righteous and devoted man, was promised by the Spirit, as we would understand it, that he would not die until he had seen the Lord's Messiah. And so Simeon began to see Jesus and speak life over him, and he was affirmed by Simeon. He was affirmed by the Spirit that was on Simeon. And so you will always be affirmed by man and confirmed by God. And so you will always be affirmed by others and confirmed by God, right? You will be affirmed by others and confirmed by God. I talk about in the book about even my own call to leadership. Church mothers and people in church affirmed me when I was a little boy by telling me that I was anointed and special, telling my parents that. We see this again even with Simeon and the prophetess Anna in Luke chapter 2, where Jesus is literally affirmed by them. I was affirmed by the elders and the church mothers when I was first born. And they was telling me that I was anointed, that I was special. See, that I was affirmed by man, but God confirmed my calling. He grew me up in maturity and in stature, and he confirmed my calling. And so when you understand who you are, what you are, and whose you are able to be deeply rooted in destiny. Your destiny will anchor you because it will make your character impenetrable in the light of things that are set to defeat you. Right? But the caveat to that and the reversal to that is that even when you know what you are and whose you are, people will still reject you. And this is why being deeply rooted in destiny is important, because you cannot allow people rejecting you to keep you from going forward in your purpose. You cannot allow people rejecting you to keep you from going forward in your purpose. Even with Jesus in Mark chapter 4 or Mark chapter 6, verses 4-6, he couldn't do miracles in his hometowns because of their lack of faith. You cannot allow people's doubts about you to keep you from being anchored in who you know you are, in what you know you are. You cannot allow people's rejection of you keep you from moving forward. If you allow people's opinions about you make you quit and to make you stop going, then you are not anchored in your destiny. You are not anchored in your destiny. And so the question is, can you remain committed to your calling even when you are not affirmed by man yet? Because see, bad situations can keep people from seeing you how God sees you, right? They could be, and let me say for lack of better words, they could be up under a spell. And God has sent you to them, but they're under a spell so demonic that they can't see how God is trying to use you in their life. They're rejecting you all the time. They should be accepting you. And so you have to choose to not take on the label of being rejected, but actually just being resolute. Pressing forward regardless. I mean, there have been people that have tried to downplay my calling. And if I let them have their way, then I would not be teaching you now. I would not have written, this 6th book. But it's because of my deep connection to my God-given destiny that I've determined that no one will stop me, because I am anchored on the rock. I am anchored in who God has confirmed me to be, to me. That's why even the time that I've taken off from my platform for months is getting realigned and recentered with God. God confirmed me. God confirmed me, reminded me of who I am, remind me of what I am. And in that time with God, he's given me the courage, and he's given me the confidence to teach and to share and to talk in such a way that nothing or nobody can stop me. That I choose destiny over being defeated. The question is, will you choose your destiny over being defeated? I mean, this is not about arrogance or pride, but it's about being comforted by the Spirit of the Lord, that any bad situation is not your end. This is prophesied even about Christ in Psalms chapter 110, verse 11. So the Spirit of the Lord, by definition, by biblical definition, is the prompting of us to do what we would choose not to do if we had a choice. And so when we face bad situations, the Spirit of the Lord pushes us forward to help us even recover in the thing that is actually set to defeat us. And so the Spirit of the Lord empowers our recovery, allows us to see beyond our limitations, allows us to be reminded of our dependency on Christ, allows us to be equipped by the Spirit to persevere for the sake of being deeply rooted in our destiny. This is strategy 5. Strategy 5 is focused on being deeply rooted in destiny, being anchored on the rock, being unmovable, right? Being immovable, being impenetrable, having a deep character, not letting what others say or think about you keep you from moving forward. See, because that's all the enemy is, as we talked about last week. An enemy is any person that stands in the way of your forward progression. And so you never let an enemy in your past. You never let an enemy in your path win. You have to learn to destroy your enemies completely. And this is not advocating violence or anything of that exaggerated nature. But what this means is it's almost like Pac-Man. If there are a lot of old school people that might be watching this, and you may remember Pac-Man, but Pac-Man will go in these lines and will just eat up them little dots. See, you have to be Pac-Man. And those dots are your enemy. Move those dots out of your way. Move your enemies out of your way in a positive way. Thank you so much for tuning in to this lesson. Please make sure you get my latest book entitled, Why Me? 5 Strategies for How Good People Can Overcome Bad Situations. Thank you so much, friends, for tuning into this episode. Until next time, peace.
May the Lord bless you, keep you, and make his face shine upon you. As we abide in his grace, presence, and peace, remember that you are an agent of change wherever your feet shall tread. Thanks for listening to this message and for the opportunity to teach and lead you. Until next time.